Today I'm going to be talking to you about acoustic treatment, room treatment, all wonderful rabbit holes to fall down. First of all, there's sound treatment versus sound proofing. They're two totally different things. Sound proofing is stopping sound from going in and out of your room. Sound treatment, that's controlling the way sound bounces around your room so that you cut down on annoying sounds like flutter echoes, stuff like that. So the next thing to think about is mixing and recording are two different beasts. So if you're mixing and you're mixing on speakers, then you want to set up your room so that you get a very clear picture of those speakers without a lot of reflections of those speakers coming into your ears. Now, recording is a very different animal. You want to get a good sound captured on a microphone. So it doesn't necessarily matter where your desk is, where your speakers are, because you're not recording while listening to your speakers, you're recording on headphones. So for me, a session musician, I got a lot of different priorities than a lot of other YouTube videos you've seen talking about setting up rooms, setting up recording studios. A lot of them are talking about, like I said, mixing. I do most of my mixing on headphones, and really as a session musician, I'm not really mixing that much. I'm usually just taking the tracks I recorded, maybe comping takes together. I don't really need to hear it on 5 different speakers and really get this accurate representation of a mix. I just have to get my bass tracks sounding tight, sounding solid, get a good performance and ship that off to the mix engineer. So for me, recording is paramount. And that's where I was a little frustrated trying to find resources to talk about how to set up a room for recording, not mixing. So my big thing has been, as a musician, going through and figuring out, okay, what are my top priorities? What do I spend the most time doing? Am I mixing a lot? Am I playing and recording a lot? If I am, what instruments, what methods, what microphones? So start there. Get to know what your skill set is and what sort of you're gravitating towards. And then the next thing is to get to know your room. So let's take a look at my room. So this is the room that I've got to work with. As you can tell, it's really nice that you got these curved ceilings here. Kind of like a vaulted cathedral ceiling. That's really nice. It helps break up the sound a lot already. In addition, I got pine walls. Pine is a wonderful wood that soaks up a lot of harsh frequencies, as well as these tongue and groove joints act as a little bit of diffusion. So that's the room I got to work with. And I decked it out with, you can kind of see here, these giant acoustic panels. We'll get into how I built those. There's tons of videos online on how to build these, but I'll kind of give you a quick rundown as to my method. And more than anything, I'm going to show you how I place these, how I figured out the best placement for what I'm doing, and I'll show you a little before and after. So I'm going to walk you through sort of the philosophy of I was figuring out, okay, what are the main things I'm doing as a musician? What do I need this room to do? And what are the issues with the room that I have to solve to get to that goal? So the main things that I'm doing is DI bass playing. I never mic an amp. I always go DI. Even Al Schmidt will tell you, Lee Sklar, Nathan East, all these guys come into the studio. He records them DI. DI is a great way to go to get a full, nice, rich bass sound. You could make an argument for blending in a little bit of cab sound in, let's say, hard rock and metal, but so many great amp sims these days, I don't find it's worth it. I knew going into this that the amount of treatment I would have to add to this room to get a good mic to cab sound is just not worth my time and energy. What is a priority for me though is I'm a major upright player. So upright being an acoustic instrument, you can't really just plug in DI. You can put pickups on uprights and they work, especially in live settings, but on a studio recording, the DI pickup upright sound just usually doesn't cut it. You can blend it in a little bit with microphones, but the main thing you're going to be focusing on is your microphone. So I had to kind of tame this space in a way that I was noticing a lot of my recordings, and you'll see in a second, we're getting a lot of the string noise, a lot of the clacky sounds of the bass being amplified by the room. I kind of had to find a way to treat the room where I could cut down a lot of those nasty reflections, cut down a bit of flutter echo. Okay, so first I'm going to take down my soundproofing. I'm going to show you what the room sounds like without it, and then we'll do a comparison. This guy here in the corner, I'm going to leave in for now. This is my bass trap. As you can tell, it's just kind of screwed to the wall and just a shit ton of rocks all filled in there. So I'm not about to unscrew that and open up a whole Pandora's box and You know, this one's got my sword on it, so I'll just have to find a new home for this guy. Maybe, actually, yeah, right here by the bass trap. Okay, here we are back in the room. Sans sound treatment. You can already hear it sounds like crap in here. So already voice test, night and day. So I'm gonna set my up right here. I'm gonna get a microphone on it. I'm probably gonna use a large diaphragm condenser. That's the nastiest one when it comes to room sound. Just to kind of really show you the difference in the room, I'm using just a single large diaphragm condenser. This is the Rode NT1000. It's kind of like an NT1A, just stepped up a few notches. Polaroid pattern, large diaphragm condenser. Let's see how this sounds with some long notes. And something just a little bit faster. And now let's see how it compares to the room treated. So this is one of the sound baffles that I'm using here. It's literally just a wooden pine frame stuffed with exactly one bat of rocks on the back. There's 10 million videos online on how to build these. I'm not going to go through it. Just put insulation in a wood frame with fabric on top. That's all there is to it. Okay, so I'm gonna walk through a little bit of my philosophy about how I hung these things up. So if you watch any of the videos online talking about setting up a mixing room, they all talk about first reflections. That is, you put your two speakers in front of you, they play at your ears, and you try to figure out where from that speaker to the wall is the first place it'll bounce and hit your ears. So you've probably seen people doing the trick where you get a friend to walk down the wall with a mirror. Essentially, when you're recording, you want to think the reverse. So this is where my bass is, kind of somewhere around here, and this is where the microphone is. Not a lot of distance, but what we're trying to think about is what's the first reflections of recording between, instead of your ears and the speaker, your microphone and the instrument. So you can pretty much kind of ballpark that, you know, if the mic's here, the instrument's here, halfway between there, straight to the wall, is where your first reflection will be. Everything is going to hit that wall right there, bounce into this microphone. So this is the most important spot to tame first. I'm going to put one up there. So here you go, first one's up. And exactly like I said, you want to catch all the sound coming off the bass, hitting this, going back into the microphone. And as far as the rest of the room, let me kind of go through a bit of my ideas around placement right now. So first of all, here's the elephant in the room. Bass in the room. I didn't want to put anything in these two corners because that's where I keep my basses. And like I said, you got to think about priorities here. And for me, for the amount of upright playing I do, a reliable storage space, i.e. a corner, was more important to me than bass trapping. So now we're going to swing over to this side of the room, which is a bit of a different story. So you can tell, you know, I'm kind of playing in that direction, which means I want to put most of my sound treatment over in this side of the room. So that's why I got this bass trap in that corner. That's catching a lot of the bass frequencies. And you can tell, like, I guess right now I'm not quite pointing that, but I usually try to aim right for that bass trap. Now going from this bass trap, there's this big open wall here. And like I said, if I'm aiming for the trap, a lot of sound is going to hit this wall. So this wall, I put 2 up. Ta-da! Now swinging around to this wall, here's another important concept to keep in mind, is you kind of want to offset the angles you're disrupting. That way they're not all catching the same spot. So what I did here is I put these vertically and horizontally over here. So that's this side of the room covered. Now for the last one thing I was thinking about is flutter echoes. So this is a straight wall here, more or less, paired with pretty much a straight wall over here. So that's going to create a bit of flutter echo. So I want to put one on at least one of the sides. Obviously I can't hang one on the door. So I decided to put one over here. And ta-da, the room is completely treated. Okay, so here we are back at the recording station. My bass, I'm sitting on a stool with a donut on the ground. I marked that so the bass has not moved an inch. The microphone has not moved at all during the process. I have not touched the gain or anything. Let's see the comparison. Something faster again. So this is a really weird setup. This is my blanket fort method. I kind of saw this when I recorded at Catherine North Studios in Hamilton. They had a similar method. Instead of using bar stools, they had music stands. It looks a little bit more professional. Instead of some old Meta Knight quilt, they had, you know, moving blankets. Once again, use what you got. So I really like this method because it combines the best of both worlds. It gives the deep, rich lows of this ribbon mic down here that's capturing a lot of the body of the instrument, right at the bridge, and this mic here, which is catching a lot of like the finger sounds, like the kind of attacks that really make an upright bass what it is. Yeah, so you combine them together, you get a really, really lovely sound. And the blanket fort is so that essentially this mic up here, the one on the fingerboard, if that gets a little bit more room noise, I find it adds character to the bass. It makes it sound human. It makes it sound real. I mean, this is an acoustic instrument. You know, you're playing this in folk music, playing this in jazz, playing it in anything that you want that sound of rawness, authenticity. This mic will get it for you. Down here, the low end, I find that's where you want to have really tight, really compressed. I mean, think like club, like sub bass. Like that's what I want the mic down here to do. I want it to take care of a lot of the work of getting like almost like a DI bass sound, like very clean, very articulate. So that's why I put the blanket fort around it. Ribbon mics are a figure 8 pattern by default, so by putting this in the way, it absorbs a lot of the reflections that you would otherwise be getting that are being sent out into the room. It gets you a much cleaner sound while still getting the nice deep warmth of the ribbon mic. So here's the same examples again. So before I go and clean all this mess up, that's how I set up my room as a session musician, as someone who plays a lot, doesn't really mix a lot. Obviously, everyone's gonna have different needs, wants, and desires when it comes to setting up a room for recording, for mixing, depending on how much DI you're doing. If you're doing a lot of upright acoustic guitars, acoustic instruments, I mean, drums is a whole other world that I don't even get into. I mean, you really gotta invest a lot in like diffusers and more sound proofing than I even have here. But there you go. That's how you get a really great recording room.